All right, awesome. Well, hello, Lee. How are you?
I'm doing great, Greg. Have
Awesome.
to admit, I was like, got me all fancy here in this setup. I got like lights and cameras and microphones. So I was like, alrighty then, this is a real deal.
Well, welcome.
Well, thank you.
Has it been like, how long has it been since we actually saw each other,
like in
face
real
to
life?
face? Yeah.
Like not through like a
Not
TV
through,
monitor
yeah,
or
I mean,
something
I saw
like
you
that?
every single morning for
that's
about
true.
18 months. But I think it was was it before all the COVID stuff kicked off?
No,
or
I think
did
I made
you,
one.
you
I
made
came
one
down like
once?
once. So I think we've only, like in the past 18 months, it's probably been only once.
Okay. Yeah,
That's crazy.
that is crazy.
I mean, yeah, if you think about it, I mean, there's been a lot going on in your life. I will have to admit that every morning, you know, y'all see Millie on some of his social media. I miss Greg, but I have to admit I kind of miss Millie. You know, that was always a fun little segue each morning. She's such a cutie.
Yeah, she's she misses seeing everybody on our morning marketing stand.
Oh yeah, well she had an interactive call every morning. Everybody's like, "Oh, Millie!"
Yeah.
TV doesn't talk to her anymore.
Yeah,
So,
it's
yeah.
sad.
Yeah,
But I send you videos from
you do.
time
I
to
do get my
time.
videos. It
She's
makes
now,
me smile.
she's now. Yesterday she was on the go. She's starting to walk with a little
Lord.
assistance, but yeah,
Life will never be the same.
no,
They start walking, they
No.
start moving, getting into everything.
Yeah.
She'll be a year old next month.
yeah. We're like 5 weeks away. She'll be 1.
Aw,
So, yeah,
God,
she's
that's been
coming
crazy.
along.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You've already got her on the boat. You probably have her fishing. She knows how to make her own like little fly things that you make, all that stuff yet?
Not quite yet. She keeps, like, if I even bring her in, so in my office at home, I have it split up where I have like my computer and office set up. I then have all my fly tying crap. And so it's a pretty dangerous place for her to be because there's like beads and hooks and all types
probably
of
not
like
the best, baby.
feathers and stuff, and so she doesn't get much in there.
No,
But
that's true.
she has been on the boat. She has made it to the beach. She likes getting outside, and
Well, good.
and yeah, she actually gets a nice little tan, which
Oh,
is which my wife was happy with.
That's
'cause
good,
our other
yeah.
girls are like super pale, and so
yeah,
she's got a good tan going.
that's good. My kids get tan. Their mother does not. So I completely understand that. I'm super jealous. Well,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming. I hope you had a good trip out down here to Florida.
I did. I mean, flying. I have to say, you know, when everybody says, you know, I have to go to the office for work or I have to fly in because I've been working remote since 2017.
Yeah,
They're like, well, where do you go? I was like, Southwest Florida. I have to go to Bonita Springs. And they're like, oh, never mind. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, I
Yeah.
go to cool
Well, that
places.
doesn't suck.
Doesn't exactly. That doesn't suck. I have to go down to Bonita Springs for a few days. Easy direct flight, easy airport. You know, I think I did post on my LinkedIn. I think you laughed at me a little bit, but I had the happiest guy sitting beside me, and he was watching. I don't know what he was watching. I couldn't tell, and I was trying not to be overly nosy. But, you know, he's sitting there, and he's just, like, cracking up while he's watching this. And so I'm sitting there on the other side. He's in the aisle. I'm by the window. And, you know, it just kind of makes you think with all the craziness that's going on in the world, with the, you know, with the negativity, the fighting, just the chaos, you know, just like a pure, honest laugh and reaction was so nice to hear. You know, it's kind of like a baby's laugh. You know, there's nothing there's nothing better than a baby's laugh. And, you know, because it's just so pure and innocent.
Yeah.
But just hearing somebody laugh and smile or seeing them smile, I guess I didn't hear them smile. But, you know, it was just nice. It was really nice. So it made the flight a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And you're always, one of the things I've always loved about you is your positive spin on just about everything and keeping that positive focus. And yeah, I saw your post and I was laughing. I was like,
because you've probably seen me sitting there trying not to laugh, sitting there trying to looking at the window, like, because you don't want to discourage somebody, or say, hey, what are you watching? Is it really good?
Yeah, I've always been guilty. Like I haven't been flying much lately, but you know, back before last year, I was flying like nonstop, like, you know, 30, 40 weeks out of the year.
Right.
And so I'd be watching things on my iPad or my laptop on the plane. And one of my favorites was Curb Your Enthusiasm, which I always watch that on the plane, and I would just be like killed over laughing, and people are probably looking at me like, this isn't the place for this, but it was a great way to pass time on all my travels.
It's better than crying. It's like, there's no way you're going to catch me watching like Band of Brothers or something on a flight where I'm just like boohooing, asking the flight attendant for tissues or something like that. Much rather hear people laughing. You talk about like Curb Your Enthusiasm. Whose line is it anyway?
Yeah.
I love that, watching reruns of that. And what's the other show?
I also watched on like Delta where they'd have, they have the shows, Impractical Jokers. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah,
but
that's a good one.
That's another one of my favorites where it's just some of the stuff is so like ridiculous and like cringy that it's it makes for a good watch on the flights.
So I have I get real embarrassed for other people. So like when you get too cringy, I start to get embarrassed. It's rather than funny. And I'm just like, I can't watch people do that. I can't. It's like my daughter's watching some like Bachelor show. And I was like, I can't watch it. It's too cringy. Now I can watch other things like that. Some of the jokes are funny and stuff like that. But I don't do cringy. No. And we have like a whole society based on cringy. Yeah. And I'm like, I just can't. I can't. I get embarrassed for them. What would I do in that situation? But yeah, life. I do. Some people say I have like a little Pollyanna view of life, and I don't. I'm very realistic in what it is. I think I've made a conscious decision a long time ago is that I can either dwell in the negative or focus on the positive and move forward. And I was reading actually an article. It was talking about, was it? I always say the word wrong. Remunerating, or progressing.
Yeah.
Am I actually like am I evaluating things and looking at what like to make things better, or am I just sitting there and just dwelling on what's negative and what's going wrong?
Yeah.
And how do you make that? And so I've always tried not to do that because it's very easy to get stuck in like the quagmire of what's going on, and you just it's not helping anybody.
Sure.
It doesn't. Yeah, you need to vent for a minute, but now it's time to move on.
Yep.
And what's the next? And so I've made a conscious decision in my life to try to do that, whether it's work, family, kids, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so I do.
Yeah.
So
and I think I guess we met maybe 5 years ago for the first time, and then I don't know when you came on board and we started working together.
Yeah.
When was that? 4 years ago?
4 years ago, 2017.
Okay. And it was kind of one of those things where we had met, and I knew, you knew a lot of people in the industry, and we were looking to grow the company. It was like, hey, this is where we're trying to go. We don't really have a job description, but do you want to be a part of it? And yeah,
sure, why not? I know that's what I tell people. It's like I wasn't really, when you talk about like the power of LinkedIn and networking, and because we had run in the same circls, and we had talked a few times and doing some different things, but it was, I remember y'all, Flight Docs before that had received like some additional funding, and all of a sudden there's like all these job postings, and I was like, okay, Greg, dude, seriously.
What's going on?
What's going on? Yeah. And with no intention necessarily of a job, it's just things were exciting. And it was cool to see what was happening. Yeah. And then the next thing I knew, I had a job.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to commute anymore. I was like, oh, wait, you can work from home. You don't have to drive to DFW Airport. I was like, yes, score. Yeah. But no, it was just kind of reaching out, networking. And, it was, I loved where I was before. I was at Flight Safety, worked with wonderful people there, loved all my customers, luckily staying kind of in the same circles. I was able to keep working with those same customers, keep staying involved with the same organizations, actually at a higher level. I was able to take that involvement and kind of take it to a higher level, coming over to the Flight Docs and, now with ATP and stuff like that. So, it was kind of a natural progression in my personal career, as well as getting to be more involved in like the business side of what was going on, smaller company, more exposure in what was going on, understanding more about what, working as the business, and understanding more about like the operations of a flight department. So that was a lot, because I'd always been kind of on the maintenance and training side.
Right.
So coming over to more about the maintenance operations side And then, of course, the entire flight department operations, is really, obviously, it intrigued me enough. I got a new job, got a whole new career line out of it, going different places, looking at different stuff. So, no, it was a very fortuitous conversation.
Yeah, it turned out well. And
I would say it turned out pretty good.
It turned out pretty good. And so now fast forward, you're now, last year, Flight Docs, ATP merged,
right.
Went through that. We actually brought together, we had a marketing team, ATP had a marketing team. The whole company merged together. Right. And out of that, you're now the VP of marketing at ATP. And, we worked together in bringing that merge, and kind of, there was a lot that went into, doing a rebrand, a new website, and there's a lot that goes on. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about today was really like the marketing that you guys are doing and the team that you're leading now. And you put in a lot of heavy lifting to kind of put in this, I'll call it like a marketing infrastructure.
Right.
And I think that for me, as I'm talking to a lot of the companies in aviation, whether they're technology companies or charter operators or, parts suppliers or vendors or whatever they may be, I think a lot of companies that you look at, they maybe struggle a little bit in kind of building up an effective marketing team.
Yeah.
And some of the smaller companies, it ends up being kind of like a part-time job for somebody that is either in like the sales department or is an executive. That's kind of what I did like years ago, was like, as I was doing all these other different things, I was like, oh crap, we got to get that DOM ad like put together and off to Bob and over at DOM. And, it was always kind of like this, it was almost a secondary thing.
It's an afterthought.
It's an afterthought, when in reality, marketing is just such a critical piece of growing your business. And I think even, what I was just referencing was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, before I think really LinkedIn had become a big platform for our industry. There was a lot of like print ads. There was, our trade shows. There was some, I'd say, like digital advertising, like banner ads and stuff like that. But I think a lot has kind of transformed in the last couple of years. So, what I wanted to ask you is like, can you walk us through kind of this infrastructure and what the team looks like today and how you've been effective in building that?
Well, I think you're spot on. It's about the infrastructure, and regardless of the size of your marketing team, I mean, one of the great things about today is that you can, even if you can't hire like full-time people, there's so many different tools out there that you can allow you to have like a big marketing department feel without the overhead of a big marketing department. Now, you can also get sucked into a lot of marketing company, I don't want to say nonsense, but you have to be very focused on what it is you can do, what it is that what are your goals, and understanding, because, I mean, marketing agencies, they're marketers. They know how to sell you. That's what they do. And so it takes, you need to take a step back and think about what it is exactly what I need for my organization. And when I think about marketing, and now I didn't come from a marketing background. I ended up in marketing. I say I'm kind of an aviation person who is now in marketing, which brings a different perspective to it.
Sure.
But I think about it, and you're always doing marketing. My original, like I said, I was in the education side of it, but it was also starting a nonprofit, and I call it like guerrilla marketing because we had no money. We had no money, and this was a lot before, like the social media, so we didn't have a lot of those things. So that kind of changed my perception. And honestly, if I somehow got a bachelor's in business without a single marketing class, don't ask me how. I went to I had a project management focus in my bachelor's degree, but anything I had learned then is almost completely irrelevant now.
Sure.
And that's okay. But one of the things when I think about marketing, it's really about, no matter what channel, how you're doing it, it's about telling a story and connecting with your customers. connecting with your current customers, connecting with your prospects, and connecting with the industry. So when I think about that, it's like, how do you do that?
Mm-hmm.
And, you talk about the infrastructure, and we live in a digital world now. So do you have an effective website? I mean, that's at the very most basic. Do you have an effective website? And it's easy to build one, but have you built the right one?
Right.
And, search engine optimization is so important. It's, when you're talking about being found, and how is that website going to transfer into getting people in the door? Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big piece. I also think it's very easy to overcomplicate your website.
Sure.
I think almost anything is so easy to try to shove everything into. I think it's better to simplify.
Yeah.
We've
had that conversation. Yeah.
And I think everything has a place, but at the same time, you want to streamline what's going on. And so when you're looking at these different pieces, who do you have a good website? Do you have somebody on staff who can manage that website? Or do you have a relationship with a good vendor or a good contractor or something along those lines? And so we have a couple of different people that we have help with ours, as well as we manage quite a bit of it internally. But, but then and also one of the worst things in the world is to start Googling marketing terms. Oh my Lord. Because just the sheer volume of what happens. But, as you're learning and you're going through it, I think everybody always wants to know, how many leads do I have? How many leads do I have? What's a MQL? And it's very easy to get lost also, I believe, in vanity metrics. That's what I call them. Mm-hmm. And so a couple of things that we've kind of adopted is we have responses, which are quantity. We're doing MQLs, which are quality. And then how does that translate in? Because you do want to measure and have an idea of your reach.
Sure.
How much is getting out there? How many people are looking at your social posts? How many people are clicking on different things? You definitely want to know that. But a lot of that's about quantity.
Yeah.
And then actually looking at your MQLs for quality. Because the worst thing you want to do is hand over just a bunch of stuff to your sales department. And, if only 5-10% of those are actually worth calling, all you've done is waste 95% of their time.
Yeah.
So, and it's hard. It's very, very hard. But at the same time, though, taking that extra step and working towards that quality metric, I think is something that you need to do. And so depending on what your team is, some people may be a solo one, so you're actually able to go through and you make sure and you look at it. Automation is a big key, especially the bigger the company gets. You want to automate as much as possible. But there's using those tools. Like HubSpot is a great tool to use. Mm-hmm. It's also, they have a CRM tool. They have the marketing automations tools. There's a lot of CRM things you can go out. Salesforce, HubSpot. Yeah. But like I say, don't overcomplicate things either. Right. It's just so easy to overcomplicate.
I think, backing up just a sec, I think one of the really important things about marketing, and I think where you see a lot of marketing teams go maybe off the rails, and you talk to a lot of organizations where there's this internal kind of battle between marketing and sales, and I think a lot of people are very familiar with this struggle on okay, what is marketing doing? Marketing, I think a lot of salespeople think marketing may be running kind of independently, and they have their own goals and their own metrics. And if you are measuring your business just based on the quantity of MQLs, or measuring the marketing team's success based on the number of MQLs, probably failing as a marketing team, right? Just by looking at it and saying, hey, we brought in 10% more MQLs than last month. Okay, well, who are those people? Are they qualified? Are they legit? What's their likelihood to close? And so I think that one of the things that you're bringing to the team is that you have this aviation background, and so you're looking at things through the lens of, okay, I know we were primarily selling to directors of maintenance, which is kind of our key contact in most of our products, right? And so you were looking at things through the lens of the DOMs and then saying, okay, everything that we do and we put out should be focused on relatable and building, building awareness, building comfort, getting them familiar to the point where, okay, if either they're going to come inbound and say, hey, we want to do a demo or we want to talk to somebody about this, or, our sales team did a lot of outbound activity. And so I always looked at it in a way of, okay, we're doing outbound. Sales is really a critical, component of success. I think especially in our industry, there's, I'll say limited, there's always this hesitancy for change in our industry.
Yes.
I think some of that is changing. And so it's not every day that our buyers are necessarily looking for new solutions. And so we're trying to educate them on that. But when those salespeople pick up the phone and go outbound, we want those prospects to be as familiar as possible, where they're willing to take that cold call and have a look, right?
Well, and I think, that's where you get into like, how are you showing that you're not just, I don't want to say altruistic. It's like, you want to be a part of the industry. You want to make sure that they know. And this industry, I've always said it's a worldwide industry, but a very small community, very small community. Yep. And so in order to succeed, you need to be part of that community.
Right.
You need to have that, I don't know, skin in the game. I don't know how better way to say it, but they need to know that you have some skin in the game, that you understand and appreciate what's going on in their flight departments. And, one of the reasons I've always said, like, some of the things that they're so hesitant to change is because once that aircraft takes off, they have no more control. So that is always a variable. When that airplane takes off, that helicopter takes off, they are out of control now, and they don't know what's going to happen. So they've done everything in their power to make sure that that's a safe flight for everybody involved. So because they can't control that, they don't want to change the stuff that's in the hangar. They don't want to change the stuff that's on the ground, because that they can control. Yeah. So sometimes they look at change like, there's all this stuff that's not there. But at the same time, even when our very earliest conversations, Greg, was, there's better ways to do things. So let's work. And that was a lot of what attracted me to make that change, was because there's I don't want to, it's not necessarily better, but we have tools that can help to relieve the burden. Let you work on the aircraft that you want. Let you do the part of the job that you like. Yep. You don't like the paperwork part.
Right.
You don't want to do the paperwork part. And especially if you do it right, you don't want to do the paperwork part because it takes time. So spend your time on the aircraft, not on the paperwork. And so that was also, but you have to have that comfort level that, one, it works, and two, it's going to be okay.
Sure.
And so there's a hesitancy, and that's okay though. But that's how you start reinforcing that you're part of the industry. And that is, with thought leadership, getting involved, being involved in the organizations, bringing in guests to speak. It's definitely not me telling you how to run your flight department.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. But, I do know a lot of people who are very successful at it.
Yeah.
And can help you with different pieces. So, it's bringing those people in with our thought leadership webinars, with, what is it that we can do? Having fun with it as well. I think it's very easy to get lost in kind of the stodginess of what we do, because it's so highly regulated. So there has to be a part where you do have to do that. But at the same time, you're still humans. You still want to have fun. You still want to have a conversation with somebody.
Sure.
And there still needs to be value in that. So how do you portray that? And how do you give that feeling? Because a lot of it is feeling, especially when you're trying to talk to somebody about change. They don't want to change if they're not comfortable.
Right.
And, I wouldn't ask them to change if they're not comfortable. I would never do that.
Sure.
So, and then we're talking about like the different pieces of your infrastructure and what you're looking for in building up your marketing team, is you have to have somebody who can help to relate that story. And that's a big piece. And fortunately, we have social media now, which, when you're trying to tell somebody how to do that, you have an outlet, an easy outlet.
Yep.
And honestly, you're talking about being cringy. But, you have to start somewhere. And the people who are successful with their businesses and leveraging social media, it's not always the polished, finished work of like your official page. It's the people who are the faces of your company. And if you're a small company, some of the best things you can do is to get your owner or whoever that person is, get them on social media, engaging, giving little tips and tricks, and then they promote the company. And
right.
That's where you start to see those relationships grow. You see networkings build. You start to see that kind of that trust building.
Yeah.
And that's what the marketing is about. It's about that trust factor. Exactly what you're saying. So if somebody calls, they're like, "Oh yeah, I follow your boss, or I follow one of your pilots on LinkedIn. They have great pictures, or something like that. And so it's telling that story and building that rapport. Yeah,
because I think that it's what we've seen in the last couple of years, and I've seen it, is that you connect with these people where it used to be, okay, I needed to fly to Columbus and go walk around the hangars, which I still love doing.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
There's still value in doing all that, right? But there's all these people that I know that I've actually never met before, but they know who I am. They know what I've done. They've known the products and the services that I've been involved in or with. And just the power of that is huge. And so, I look at some of the companies that are out there today, and they're wondering, okay, how do we grow? And then I look at, okay, well, let me take a look at your website. Let me take a look at your social media presence. Let me take a look at the content that you guys are putting out. And I'll find things like the CEO is, his picture's not on the website. He's not on LinkedIn. And then I'll look at their website, and there's not a good description of what the company actually does, which, you had kind of mentioned earlier. And then you'll see, okay, when's the last YouTube video that they had posted? And it was from, 3.5 years ago, and it was, based on an old product. And these are companies that are asking, okay, we want to grow. How do we grow? And there's a lot of little things. Now, they don't necessarily need to be all that expensive.
That's exactly right. An iPhone.
The amount of content that you're able to create with a pretty limited budget, and it is pretty remarkable. And you don't need, necessarily a whole, a marketing agency. You don't need a whole film crew. There's a lot that can be done to just boost your presence and get that conversation going.
No, with an iPhone these days, or I guess an Android, I don't know, I haven't never had an Android phone, but an iPhone, you can do just about anything. And it's simple things, like say, we're talking aviation here, and mainly we're talking about like the maintenance side of it. But, so let's say you have a G150 or whatever. So, and there's a flap slat issue. You can do a quick video saying, hey, just so you know, I don't know if y'all have ever come across this before, but looky right here. If you look, see here, then this is something that you can address and fix. Yep. So here's a daily tip. 0 production, upload it, go. Done.
Make 10 connections.
Oh, absolutely.
People messaging you.
Absolutely.
The amount that you can gain just from simple things like that is just, it's crazy.
And you can see smaller like repair stations, maintenance facilities that do that very well. 135s that take the time that, they have their pilots who are pretty active. Yeah. So, you've got the graphics, the videos of, the aircraft in operation, things like that start to engage people. How are you engaging? And with the way charter's taken off here lately, it's been crazy, but at the same time, it's okay. So how do you differentiate yourself? And there's some people that I know who are doing a great job at that. And you can tell, there's a lot of thought behind it, not necessarily a lot of money all the time.
Right.
And sometimes the more money you put behind it, the longer it takes to get out as well.
Yeah.
And so if you can just, be in the moment, do different things. This day and age, authenticity is key.
Yeah.
People want to know it's authentic. They want to know what you're doing. If you take too much time to produce, if you take too much time to polish, you lose some of that authenticity. So don't use that as a barrier.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that I see is that why some of these companies or individuals don't necessarily do that is that they're kind of worried about that quality, or they're thinking through every message or every post or every picture and saying like, does this fit in every way? Or, and I think that one of the things that I've always been about has been like, just doing. Right. And
just hit send.
Just do it. Like, as long as obviously you got to make sure that you're not hurting your image or saying something stupid that can hurt your reputation. But in general, these are like quick hit things, right? You know, people see them for 24 hours and then, they kind of fade away. Mm-hmm. And so that also kind of brings me to like the cadence of
and
all
consistency,
of this, right? And so how have you, it's very easy to like kind of do like quick pops of these things, and you'll see companies go dormant for a month and then they post something. How have you guys like really locked in on the cadence? What do you do there?
So there's a couple of different things we've done. Also, if anybody ever asks me about how we manage, I'm very much a Monday.com proponent.
Yeah.
Greg's trying not to roll his eyes right now because like,
I love
Monday. But it's about, that goes back to like my project management. And, when you're talking about the people who are doing this, is like we have a great person on staff who, plans it out a month. And, she sits there and she thinks about it and she goes through, and we have like our standard items. We'll also look at what's going on in the industry and just reposting things with a personal commentary.
Right.
What's going on our page. But it's also, and it's kind of hard to do that on a personal one. And you can see me even on LinkedIn. It kind of ebbs and flows.
Yeah, sure.
What I personally do. When I post, I honestly don't post a lot. I like a lot. I react to a lot.
Sure.
I comment, but even that keeps me
engaged in the conversation.
Yeah. I mean, LinkedIn to me is like one of the best ways to find out what's going on in the industry. I don't even know how many companies I follow, but I always find some type of little random tidbit, a nugget about what's going on. And, that either helps me in personal conversations,
right,
or I forward it over to our social media person and she puts that in the queue. We have something for every day. What is it? And, using tools like, HubSpot, Hootsuite, a couple of different other ones you can use to automate that.
Right.
So if you're a one-man show, you spend a couple of hours planning out and scheduling, maybe 2 weeks.
Yep.
They don't have to be overcomplicated posts. It could be a repost, it can be a picture, different things like that. You can schedule 2 weeks at a time. And then when something pops up, you just kind of throw that in there. But the cadence is very important.
Yeah.
And also understanding the channel. So like I look at LinkedIn as education. Facebook is more entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
Instagram is more like, that's highly visual. So, you want to make sure that it's something that's like pictures, videos, something that catches the attention.
Yeah.
So, you do have to think about that content on which of the channels you're using,
mm-hmm,
and how that goes through and what that audience is looking for when they go there. And so that's definitely something that you want to think about. So, how are you doing that? Because the same post that you put on LinkedIn might need to be tweaked for Facebook. Yeah, it's easy to just use the same one on all of them, but then you're not going to get the impact.
Right.
Of what
understanding
that means.
where you're posting and how your audience may differ in those different platforms.
And then so say you're a one-man show. You're just one person and you've got your schedule there, but everybody knows that Sarah's the CEO.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you got Sarah, the CEO, but Sarah's also the social media coordinator because, Sarah, this is Sarah's company. And so her company has these automated posts that she's put out in her cadence. She has this ready, but she also knows in the back of her mind, I'm going to reshare this post.
Mm-hmm.
And here's going to be my personal comment on my company post. And so she knows that as she's going through. So maybe once a week, she knows that I'm going to respond to this post that I've already scheduled out to give my personal perspective. And then people they get kind of the company exposure. But now they're also a little bit more comfortable because they know Sarah's position.
Right.
So she reinforces that with her personal comments, questions, or however that goes.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and so I think there's a lot that can be done with just like kind of simple social posts, right?
Simple.
I think the other thing that I wanted to touch upon was really like digging into a little bit. Maybe this takes a little bit more planning and a little bit more thought, but you had talked about some of the thought leadership stuff.
Oh yeah.
And so earlier this year, one of the things that I was involved in that you had led was one of the webinars that we had done. And this was a super successful event in just getting exposure and bringing educational information to users, to the industry. So talk a little bit about that and what your position on that and the benefits on how that all works.
Well, that comes to understanding your audience and understanding your target.
Right.
And so like when you're talking about aviation maintenance, aviation operations, some of the topics that are that they need the most are not going to be topics that anybody else is interested in.
Sure.
And so sometimes you're trying to tell somebody, no, you don't understand. This is a highly controversial topic on this regulation. And then they're like, we're not doing a webinar on regulations. I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is huge. And it's kind of like, so, it's, so in aviation right now, especially 91, 135s, world, different things along those lines, is MELs, MMELs.
Right.
It's huge. It's regulations.
Right.
So you say that and people are like, oh, Lord. But this is the content that our people need because there's so much going on around it. There's so many questions that education and an update is always appreciated.
Right.
And that has turned into one of our most successful webinars. And we actually did a webinar series on it. So we did 2 webinars on that. We're actually sponsoring a follow-up session at base because they're continuing that conversation because there's still things that need to be answered.
Right.
So it's knowing your audience, and my audience, aviation audience, wants to talk about the regs.
Yeah.
They want to talk about, the technical aspects of what it takes to do their job, to be compliant, to talk about the pain points in being compliant.
Right.
To know what the FAA is doing. And so then it's finding those right people that have the insight into that to be able to answer those questions.
Right. And it's not, I think, and I've thought about this in the past as we were looking to do events and things like that, and always looking at it from like a sales approach. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna, if we're gonna do a webinar, I'm gonna showcase my product, right? Because I want to sell. In those types of situations, you draw a lot fewer people because they need to be interested in that product. In going down this route and becoming a resource for the industry, we were able to really drive exposure to our brand. We didn't even talk about the products or things like that. But in this case, it was something like 50, I think if I remember correct, it was like 1,500 people registered.
Oh, yes.
And maybe 600 or 700 people attended.
Oh, no, we had like over 800 attend on the first one. But you're right.
For a webinar. On
regulations.
In business aviation, which is, those are pretty huge numbers for those who know our industry. To draw that type of a crowd is awesome. And we were able to link up with David Burke, who, I call him the MEL guru. I don't know anybody else who loves MELs as much as he does. But he was able to provide a lot of input, and there was a lot, like, what was there, 100+ questions in the chat, which we had to put together like a whole document and a follow-up. It drove that follow-up. And so these are things where there's so many topics. Like MELs is one that like we were always hearing about, but there's so many topics around the industry that you can really, if you're an expert or you have experts that you know, this is a great way to bring people together and have a conversation.
And I love bringing in new voices. So, I mean, people that know me know I've been involved in the maintenance conference for years, MBAA's maintenance conference, and finally going to be in person in San Antonio in May. So everybody watch. Woo-hoo! So yay, thank God. I might even wear a sombrero. I don't know. We'll see. I love San Antonio. But, it's looking for the new voices, because it's very easy also when you're talking about thought leadership to kind of gets, I don't want to say be in a silo, but there's certain people who've established themselves as those experts, and that's great. But there's also other people, there's a lot of people, and there's, people you can bring in, and kind of combining the old voices with the new voices, it helps, because there always is a slightly different perspective. There's aviation, no single operations the same, no SOPs the same, there's nothing. They're not the same.
Yeah.
And so there's always just a little bit of a nuance that you can share with an audience that might relate.
Yeah, sure.
And so you want to be able to get those different voices on what they're doing. Talking to different like dealers and brokers, every pre-buy is different. Every technical assessment's different. Everything every aircraft is different. I mean, there's so many variables, it depends. I mean, that's the whole thing about how does this work? Well, it depends, So understanding and thought leadership shows like, okay, so you want to bring it back to a product perspective, is that the product is scalable. Mm-hmm. And so even though we're not saying that in our marketing, like I'm not saying that in our thought leadership, I'm able to bring these thought leaders in because these are all the people we represent.
Right. Sure.
And so that helps. And so it kind of brings those audiences together, gives them the awareness of what's going on, and then makes it easier, exactly like you said, either an inbound, whether they get an email or whether, that it's a cold call.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I did attend that webinar. Oh, that was that MEL one. I went to both of them.
Yeah,
I signed up for both of them. Oh, yeah, okay, now I know why you're calling. Yeah. Sometimes it's or they call you, different thing. Maybe they have a question on MELs, or maybe they just like, okay, well, I'll give them a shot.
Yeah. See what it's all about.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so you mentioned, I'm happy to hear about the maintenance conference coming back.
I'm so excited.
That has been, for those of you who don't know, Lee is like the maintenance conference lady.
I love the maintenance conference.
And unfortunately, the last 2 years have been canceled.
Fort 2019 was the last time we had all our maintenance folks together.
So trade shows are coming back. We have the base trade show that is in like
a month.
3 weeks, 4 weeks from now. Yes. And so I know that there's a lot of controversy. We're not going to talk about that right now. But I know that there's a lot of people, just in general, when you talk about marketing and sales, there's a lot of people out there that are saying, trade shows are dead. Which I think is I think it's a little ridiculous to say.
I think it's a little extreme.
Yeah, a little extreme, right? Because you can connect with people virtually, whether it's one-on-one or in a webinar. There's also virtual events. But I don't believe that trade shows are dead. I love the maintenance conference. I love base. Like these are things that, I want to keep going. Tell me what your thoughts are on trade shows and maybe how things have maybe changed a little bit. If you think they've changed or honestly, where are you guys at?
Like changing, I really don't know. I mean, one of the great things like looking at trade shows is you're going to be able to see here like over the next year as trade shows start to be incorporated back in to like some marketing plans, you'll be able to see like in the past, I mean, I was in Charlotte. I always say I was in Charlotte the week the world shut down because that was the week the world shut down. So in 2020, I
was schedulers and dispatch.
MBAA schedulers and dispatch. And, we haven't really, there's been a couple here and there, but pretty much trade shows since then have become non-existent.
Yeah.
So we have this block of time where you're able to see there were no trade shows. Now, granted, it was a very weird time, so it's kind of, you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt when you're starting to look at numbers, but people are social. Human beings by nature are social.
Right.
And I think there's something, because aviation, like I said, is worldwide, but a very small community, is these trade shows give people the opportunity to come together, and they're able to see people that they work with all over the world.
Sure.
But in a whole different environment. I'm not just flying in, dropping in, grabbing a drink real quick and going on to my next flight. I have the opportunity to sit and converse and talk.
Right.
And, you have 3 days where you're able to see your international people, your local people, and it doesn't matter, is it your maintenance vendor? Is it your trainer? Is it your software provider?
Right.
I don't know, the caterer, or I don't know, everybody in one facility.
Yeah.
And there's just an energy to be social, and I think that's a lot of what we've missed. And whether it's, working from home, I've been working remote for years. And I mean, I know me as a remote worker, my trade shows where it's like, okay, this is where I get to go back to the office because now I get to go see my work family, because I consider like all of aviation my work family. And so now I get to go see my work family. But I think that, people crave that. And even though maybe they didn't technically work from home, aviation people work everywhere.
Yeah.
So these are opportunities to bring them together into a quasi-social setting, still getting business done, but it's still a social setting. So I think that, and I do think it depends on the industry. So, I mean, if you have an industry that honestly doesn't necessarily interact.
Right. I mean, I think you bring up a really unique point about that is like, how much interaction and like everything is intertwined. And when you talk about aviation, you're flying all over the place.
Absolutely.
And you're using such a variety of services to make all of this happen. And so when you go to these trade shows, it's not necessarily like a tech trade show where you're just looking at like, these are all these different software providers, and they all do like a little bit different of a piece of a puzzle, but they, maybe they work together, maybe they don't. But in a lot of cases, the attendees that come to these shows work with like 30, 50, 100 of these different vendors in a year time frame, right? And so
absolutely.
I think it's just still really important, and just the connections, obviously you can talk through Zoom, you can build relationships that way, but the connections that you get when you go to these shows, and it's just different, right?
It's very different. And I mean, I think there's something about it actually solidifies those virtual connections that you've made.
Sure.
I don't know how many people have come up to me, and I have never met them.
Yeah.
But I know them. And, they come up and they're like, Lee. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, no. I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to finally meet you in person.
Yeah.
And, you give a hug, you talk, and it's like, okay, so now I've like solidified that connection that I've only had virtual before.
Sure.
And so, for me, I am a social creature. Believe it or not, I am kind of an introvert, but at the same time, I am social, and I want to see people. I want to give people a hug. A quick hug. I want to give people a hug, and I want to talk to you. I want to know how you're doing. I want to be able to gauge your reaction and hear your voice, not just through that. And if I'm a customer, as a customer attending a show, I want to go and see the people I work with. Because you get a whole different feel when you're there. It's like, whether it's a good vibe or a bad vibe.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's a good vibe.
Yeah.
You come see us, it's going to be a good vibe. At the very least, we're going to shove a pair of socks in your hands as you walk away. But, but you get a vibe about what's going on, and you need that. I truly do believe you need that human connection. And, how you do a trade show, everybody has a different approach. You have different budgets. You have different budgets. You have different, what's your product, your service, whatever you're selling is different. So, how you approach it may be different, but the human connection is not different.
Yeah.
That is there. And, there is nothing more valuable in a trade show booth than a smile and a hello.
Yep.
There's truly not.
Yeah.
And so if I could say anything on a trade show booth,
bring your happy people.
Bring your happy people.
Yeah.
Put your phone down. Quit staring at your phone the whole time. Engage people. And at the very least, just be glad to be there.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do a hard sell. Hey, do you want to buy this? This is not the kiosks at the mall.
Right.
Don't spray them with your cologne. Don't try to fix their hair. Don't do that. That's not what we're doing. But just to smile and engage, because right now people are hungry for that.
Right.
I know I am.
Yeah.
I'm hungry for that interaction. And honestly, if you want to come watch a demo, that's great. But at the very least, say hi.
Yeah.
I just want to say hi.
Yeah.
Because, that's, you need it.
Sure.
And that'll follow up in the next ones.
And so, the last show I went to in person was 2019 base. So almost 2 years ago, which is sad.
Right.
But, the last show that I was at was just, it was craziness, I think.
Mm-hmm.
We had an incredible show where, it's a 3-day show and literally the booth was packed out every single day.
Yep.
And so, for me, it was very, very easy to say that show is worth it without looking at, obviously you always want to measure and try and see how many leads and what came of it and everything like that. But there's something to be said that there's hundreds, if not thousands of people that stop by in that 3-day time frame.
Absolutely.
Right? And so what would you say, I think some companies may not get that level of activity, right? And it just might be your business or the number of customers you have or whatever. So not to say that it's a failure if you don't have that, but I think that some companies may not do the right prep work to create it, because you have to create that. It doesn't just doesn't just happen. So any kind of tips in regard, and I know we're getting close here, but there's still a couple weeks
absolutely
to keep that going. Any tips for driving activity and interest and getting what I call like a buzz going before the show?
I think first off, there's understanding what you're wanting to accomplish, kind of like you were just saying. So there's absolutely, there are the measurables, like how many deals were closed, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like, what all are you trying to accomplish? Where is your business in its life cycle? Are you a new business who's just like going for brand awareness? Are you an established business who's trying to go trying to just kind of touch base with like existing customers? Maybe you're working on renewals, not necessarily as much new business, different things along those lines. Do you have a new product? Have you looked at all the opportunities that whoever's sponsoring this show has given you?
Right.
Have you leveraged all of the social media aspects? Have you acted excited to be there? Are you acting like you're ready to go?
Yeah.
I think whether it's social post, whether it's calling, hey, I got some extra passes. Do you want to go? Can't wait to see you. Different things along those lines. What is that personal touch you can put to the people that you're actually targeting?
Right.
But I also think being on social media and acting like you're excited, conveying that excitement out to people, whether it's through fancy graphics, if you have somebody who can do that, or whether it's through an iPhone video saying, hey, we're going to be there. We're going to be in booth such and such and such and such. Can't wait to see you. Need a pass? Here, shoot me a DM and I will be more than happy. I got some extra ones. I'd love to have you come join us.
Yeah. The work starts long before you show up at the show, right?
I mean, honestly, you start looking at it and it's probably about 6 weeks out. Mm-hmm. I mean, is when you need to start your promotions.
Right.
Of course, it's not too late now. We've still got a month. But, it's like starting, because it starts to show that excitement. And we're in it. We're here. We're in it. We're dedicated. We're going to be there. We can't wait to see you.
Yeah.
And this is what we have to show you.
Yeah. So, and I think it comes... I had written some posts about some of this stuff in the prep, but it's really about creating content that gets people engaged and they want to come see you there, right? Because you can post all you want about like, hey, come see us at the booth, come see us at the booth.
But
you
why?
need to do some of that. Exactly. But why would they come see you at the booth? And so I really encourage anybody who is who's exhibiting to really start thinking about, okay, if you were going to a trade show, why would you go see somebody? What would get your attention, right? And so looking at, all of your products, your services, going back to really like the basics of marketing, like exposing pain for customers, getting them excited about a product, filling a need for them or their operation. Those are things like the basics in creating content that gets their attention, leading up to the show, getting them excited. So, video content, press releases about, new products or partnerships or, new people joining your team. It comes into like creating that content and getting a kind of a rapid cadence to it.
Yep.
To where people are saying, you guys are doing a lot. Like it's kind of similar to when you had reached out to us and reached out to me and you were like, what's going on? Like, what are you guys, what are you guys up to? And during that time, I had a lot of people from the industry reaching out and saying the same thing. Like, wow, you guys are doing so much. Like, what's going on? What's going on? You got to tell me about this. I think that's what you really need to create to have a successful trade show.
I agree. And so there's like a combination. So like, as we were doing our planning for our 6 weeks out, we have about, maybe about 3 different approaches that we're taking that are all running simultaneously.
Yeah.
So, we definitely have the product because at the end of the day, that's what we're selling. So we have to have that in there. So we have a whole line that's just kind of focusing on the product. Then we have a couple of other ones that are like save the date. We can't, really more about the show and attending and come see us, kind of the fun side of it.
Sure.
The fun engagement side of it. So we have, so it's kind of a amalgamation of all of these that are going together at the same time. So, and it's trying to figure out that cadence where, you don't want them to just start deleting your emails or, clicking through your ads or doing things, or like the calls or whatever your approach is. But, it's like, here's something fun, here's the product, which we still make fun.
Yeah.
And then here's something cool that's happening at the show.
Right.
Here's another benefit that you're going to have. I know that, you're a single aircraft operator. Hey, did you know that there's a single aircraft operator symposium that's going to be happening on that Monday? So we want to make sure that they're aware of that. Oh, by the way, we're a sponsor, because we understand that that's important to you.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's showing that here's our product. We are focused on your part of the industry. Come and see us. Also, at the same time, another product, like with our particular product, it's like, don't wait until base. Let's get a demo now.
Right.
It's like we don't want to try to push all the business out 6 weeks either.
Right.
So, there's a balance as you're going through there because you want to keep the people engaged the entire process.
Yeah.
And do it in a way that is incorporated into your sales cycle. And and without getting with all the little marketing terms and all that other stuff, when you're looking at lead gen versus demand gen, we take like demand gen's the big picture, lead gen's a portion of that.
Right.
How are you going through that entire process and hitting all the points?
Right.
Because like the lead gen is a lot with the pain points like you were talking about. What are we doing? What does our product hit? What does it mean to you? How does our product address your issues? And then at the same time, all of the stuff that's kind of like the thought leadership, and that engagement on the other areas as you're pushing along that sales cycle.
Yeah.
Because you want them to be in the sales cycle.
Yeah, for sure. I think I had another topic I had talked about, which was like start selling now.
Yes.
Because, if you start the sales process at the show, we're kind of creeping up on the end of the year. Mm-hmm. So show comes, you try and do follow up. Next thing you know, Thanksgiving's here. Next thing you know, Christmas is here. Next thing you know, we got to wait till,
new budget.
2022, new budget, whatever, all the standard, obstacles. If you can get the sales process started now, start that conversation,
mm-hmm.
You'll be so much better off, because if your deal's not closed by the time the show comes around, you at least get that warm intro.
Exactly.
You hash out some of the details at the show. Maybe you close the deal at the show, which is awesome.
Absolutely.
Which always makes marketing and sales and management super happy,
yep.
right? But at least you at least you kind of truncate that sales process, and it's not starting at the time that, you get to the show, because the show is not the best place to do a full-blown demo, right?
No, I mean, there's a lot of variables.
Yeah.
But I mean, okay, so, and I think one of the things also, I think, Greg, like when you were mentioning, it's like when you're looking at who you're talking to at the show, and, one of the things that we've always done is we bring a wide variety of people, for multiple reasons. Yeah. One, we want our current customers, we need their feedback. We want to see, it's a way to talk to them in a more intimate setting. You're there, you're able to bring in your engineering, you're able to bring over your product, you're able to bring over your leadership who may not have met this customer before. Yeah. You have some things that you're working on. You're now able to get some real-time feedback from a variety of different people. Maybe they're a customer, maybe they're a future customer. Maybe it's kind of an ancillary person that you haven't thought about. But you know what? Their feedback is very valuable because, maybe they work in another area that you wouldn't necessarily have exposure to. Sure. And so, cultivating and reinforcing that relationship with your current customers, it's a lot, you don't want to lose a current customer at all. So if there's something you can do, and show them your commitment to the now and to the future, so you have to be ready with the right people and the right approach when they come up as well. Because it is about the sale, but it's also about retention. Yeah, and I think, so obviously you look at trade shows, like the big things are, what can we sell, right, to build our business. We also want to build those relationships with our customers. The other huge thing that I always looked at trade shows as was really team building. Oh, yeah. I think that was the most enjoyable, right up there with, if we were able to get new business, obviously I love that, but it was awesome being able to bring the team together. I think that last show we had like 30 something people there. Oh gosh. So like coming in and out, it was great. Yeah. I mean, like literally like a third of our entire company was there, and bringing everybody out, you have some people that maybe came from outside of the industry. It's an awesome place to like really immerse yourself and say, wow, this is like, I didn't even know all of this was going on, right? Absolutely. And so it's funny that you said that, because so when we were just doing like our first of a prep call with the team, getting ready for base, going through all the, what's happening, we got a really cool new booth, so I'm excited about that. Sweet. And, all those little things. But at the same time, when you talk about, I think that the enthusiasm behind whoever's planning it goes out, and it kind of infects the rest of the company. Right. Because exactly what you were saying about like the team building issue, this is an opportunity. I mean, I've been in aviation for, September's 21 years that I accidentally ended up in aviation. And, this is an opportunity for me to share what gets me so excited about when we're talking about it. Yeah. So, yes, you get to go see, like, okay, so you've been doing, maybe you're on like the revisions team, and you've been putting information in for like Pratt or, Rolls-Royce, GE Aviation. So you've been kind of looking at the manuals, and you know what they are, but now you get to go see what that engine is. Yeah. And you get to see the cutout, and you get to see how it moves and how it works. You get to go over to the West Star booth, and, you get to see what is an MRO. Yeah. I mean, I see this name coming through on like, as we're updating logbooks, but what is it? Yeah. I get to go over to the Bombardier booth. I get to go over and see these aircraft. And, one of the things is like seeing if they can go out and see the static display. Because not everybody gets to go to the, like one of your favorite things, walking through a hangar. Exactly. But not everybody can do that. But we can at least expose people to that. And then they start to see the big picture of where they're helping people. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, where are you helping people? Why is, we're safety, reliability, innovation. Why is that so important? Right. This is what you're doing. And, when you go and you're like able to sit in even a mock-up of like Garmin has a great booth. Yeah. I mean, when you're able to go to the Garmin booth and you see their full glass cockpit, display, and, it just brings things to a different level where you can associate what you're doing with the real world. You're not as disconnected with what your customers are going through anymore.
Sure.
So being able to share that, the excitement, it's just a whole different world.
Yeah, and I think we always came back really energized,
Absolutely.
maybe a little tired, especially if
My
it
feet
was
hurt.
Vegas,
Yes.
but definitely energized about like everything that was going on. Being able to talk with customers about the product, we brought people from every department, including, I always thought that, our engineering team, these are the guys and girls that were actually building these products. And sometimes they were built off of, my ideas or somebody else's ideas or whatever. And so for them to then go and talk directly to director of maintenance or a parts manager or a pilot and say like, okay, now I really get like why we're building this. And they were able to take feedback from those customers directly. One of the things I always loved about that team was that, we gave them direction, but they always came back and gave their own direction to it. And that's, I think, how we were able to build really great products. And the trade shows really like facilitated in doing that.
Oh, absolutely. And, and like I said, it's and also like having like engineering and product be able to listen to the questions during a demo.
Yeah.
It's not just the current customers. It's like you're giving a demo and they're like, okay, oh, so that's what that question means. That's why like Greg was coming back and saying this, or, somebody from sales was coming back or client services was coming back and saying this, because these were questions that came up in a demo, because what we do has to be scalable because nothing is the same.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, now it clicks. Yeah. And it wasn't just, Lee's random thought because she was left alone too long.
Yeah.
There's a reason behind it. And, especially when you're looking at like airworthiness and safety and, depending on the aircraft, like this is why.
Yeah.
This is why. And, this is why the FARs say you must.
Yeah.
It doesn't say you might. It doesn't say here's a good idea. It says must. So there's that. It's like, oh, okay. It says I must do that. And okay, so it starts to click. And, from the very beginning. And so what are those pain points that they're seeing? How do we address it? But one of the things I've always loved about our engineering and product is they haven't been confined to the old way of doing things. Right. So they take what comes in, just like any good business does. They take what comes in and then they put the 21st century, today's approach to how we can address that pain point, how we can address that using modern tools, technology, but also thinking about tomorrow and the day after, because this is the things that we can impact.
Yeah, for sure. And so I think, kind of a similar topic, I think a lot of that plays true in this. You originally entered aviation in the education side of things. And I know that you've been a big advocate for kind of workforce development, bringing people into this industry. It's like one of the big topics that's out there about, the workforce shortages and especially in business aviation. It's kind of one of the segments of the industry that maybe doesn't get as much exposure. And so when people think, when kids are thinking about aviation, they're thinking of, okay, well, can I be a pilot? And am I going to be a pilot for, Delta or American Airlines, which obviously is a route, and there's plenty of people that do that. But how do you see this workforce development and things kind of changing in this space?
Well, I think I started at a 147 school. Like I said, I truly did end up, I needed a job. And my husband told me I had to go back to school when we got married and moved up to Fort Worth. So I was like, okay, I'll go back to school. But I was like, I have to work. So I ended up working as a student worker, and it was in a 147 school. Yeah. That turned into a full-time job, which then turned into like the NCAT certifications, blah, 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 blah. But anyway, part of my job was advising. And as you look over the years and you, that was 2000. Yeah, we moved to Fort Worth in 2000. The exposure to business aviation. And a few years later, I got very involved in MBAA. I was doing the scholarships, and I would talk to the students about the scholarship opportunities.
Yeah.
And I remember telling the students, I was like, you don't understand. This is a Falcon 2000 maintenance initial. And they're like, And finally I like got to the bottom of it. And I'm like, no, seriously, this is like a $35,000 scholarship.
Yeah.
And they're like, I was like, do you even know what a Falcon is? And they're like, no. I'm like, oh, okay, never mind. Come on, let's go. It's like, okay, let me show you what business aviation is. First off, business aviation is anything where you use an aircraft for a business application.
Yeah.
It's anything. It can be your 172 all the way to your BBJ and everything in between. So what is business aviation when you look at it like that? But when you look at and I could always kind of tell which students kind of gravitated more to different industries because you could just kind of tell on their interests. But, like the students who are wanting to, work from tip to tail, understand how the entire operation, because there's very few of those positions in an airline. There are those positions, but they're very few. You usually kind of become a specialist in a particular area. But I'm like, you don't understand. You get to work on a G550, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And maybe even fly all over the world with it, And these are the opportunities. But that exposure wasn't there. But then now we go now, and you see more of the exposure with social media, leveraging those different tools. There's still a big education gap when you're talking about exposing students to business aviation. This past year and a half has been pretty rough just because you couldn't go to the maintenance schools.
Yeah.
You couldn't go to the flight schools talking to about them. And then obviously right before all of COVID hit, the airlines were grabbing everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody, every pilot, every mechanic, anybody they could get, they were grabbing everyone. And so you were seeing kind of an exodus from business aviation into airlines. And then the world shut down. And then they started kind of coming back. But now it's picking back up. So there's a lot of people who are exposed to business aviation now that hadn't really thought about it because they'd started on this one trajectory and all of a sudden they had to pivot.
Yeah.
And so it's like, whoa, I got my pilot's license. What else am I supposed to do? And it's like, okay, well, here's other opportunities. Here are other segments of this industry that are still working.
Yeah.
But, when I think about like technology and different things on how that plays in workforce in our development, is like people want to use what they use in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And when you make, this is a, anybody who's like gone to school in the past 15 years, 10 to 15 years, these are people who do all mobile banking. They do all their shopping online. They converse online. They chat. They do everything. They do everything online. They do it from their tablet or from their phone.
Yeah.
And so then when you take them and you put them into a work environment that doesn't, when they're looking at something and saying, what is this?
Right.
They're looking for a better way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always say, you want to give your people the best tools. And you want to make them the most efficient possible. And you don't want to add an administrative burden just for the sake of an administrative burden.
Yeah.
And so, you look at these and you look at people coming in and, they're used to all the information at their fingertips. They want to be able to do a quick search. They want to be able to look at it. They want to be able to do simple things like e-signature, whether it's in their electronic flight bag, whether it's with their maintenance, whether they're doing a checklist or they're booking, they're working with their FBO at the end of their flight. That's the world we live in. And so when you look and you're trying to show somebody, like aviation has lost a lot of people over the years to other industries,
Mm-hmm.
What are those other industries that may have taken a more modern approach? Whether it was oil and gas, whether it was the railroad, elevator operators, evidently, elevator maintenance. Yeah. That was a big one, losing students to elevator maintenance. They have options. So what do you show them about the value of what they're doing? Because some people come into an industry because they've been watching airplanes their entire life. I wasn't one of those people.
Right.
But, when you're looking at it, these are all the cool things you get to do.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things where if you're a leader in this space, this is something that you can't afford to not be aware of and conscious of, because you're relying on, you have to keep the people that are in this industry right now.
You
and
need to keep 'em.
you need to create a path to bring new people in the industry to make this sustainable, right? And so I think that, looking at, like you had mentioned, looking at the technology, I think one of the things that I always noticed in some of the organizations was maybe not a clear career progression, right?
Yes.
And there's a lot to business aviation, and there's a lot of great opportunities for people in this space, and really trying to when people are entering or maybe are thinking about entering, really trying to educate them on like everything that's out there. Because I think right now, like you look at the aircraft that are coming out of production, like these are almost just as much computers as they are.
Almost more so.
Right. And so we should be looking at pulling people from that are going down a technology career path and pulling them into this space.
Absolutely.
There's a business, there's a huge business aspect to what's going on. So bringing, business majors or people like that into it, there's just huge opportunities.
And I think when you look at it, so, it used to be like, well, you get your A&P, go work for a service center, and maybe you'll get lucky and get picked up by a flight department.
Exactly.
I mean, it was like, okay, well, wait a minute, that's my career path. And there's been initiatives over the years. I mean, my whole NCAT one was trying to find additional certifications to start highlighting those specific skills, especially in the avionics world, because like you were talking about, advanced electronics, avionics, getting into, yes, your airframe covers that, but that doesn't mean you should be doing that. Let's just be honest. You probably shouldn't be doing that just because you have an airframe license. But there's the technical side of it, and you definitely want to build that. Whether it's Rolls-Royce and their new virtual training for their engine maintenance. I mean, I'm hoping they have that at base, because I just want to go sit and do that. Know that I can go play with an engine and not break anything. That would be great. It's about how I do on flight simulators. But anyway, there's ways to show what that progression's going to be. And, you've always got to focus on your technical skills, but they have to be complemented by the business management. I mean, you can't get around that. You need to know accounting, you need to know finance, because especially if you're like in a 91 operation, you're almost like your own little business inside a big business. Yeah. And you have to be able to show the value of your flight department to the big business. Mm-hmm. And so you have your little business inside your big business that you have to be able to converse about, because those people just see numbers. Yeah. They don't understand the business case for your flight department. And as a leader in a flight department, you need to be able to articulate that from what is the business case? If you're in a 135, you need to know the business of aviation. Yeah. And as you do see more DOMs who are getting into like director of aviation positions, and kind of taking those leadership positions on. And I think that's great for the industry, because it brings in that diversity of experience and new perspectives into your flight department. And so you're starting to see those progressions as they're going forward, and you're able to talk about them now. You have, whether you go to an Embry-Riddle and you're getting your aviation maintenance management degree, what are you doing that? Are you going through the MBAA's CAM program? There's different things now that are helping you to build those skills needed to progress yourself. Sure. And you don't necessarily have to be dependent on your company to provide it. Yeah. So you still have to show, regardless of your industry, you still have to show some initiative to take advantage of those opportunities to go forward and continue educating yourself. And especially technologically. Don't forget the core of what you're doing. Just because you got your A&P, don't forget what you're doing. Yeah. Take advantage of every single education opportunity. And one of the things that's great about social media now is, like, I have people reach out to me. Be that person. If they reach out to you, if they have a question about, if they see that you are a director of maintenance, if they see that you're a chief pilot, and they reach out to you, be that person they can reach out to. Doesn't mean that you have to be their dedicated mentor, right. But you can find and you can help them explore these different options. Send them links to scholarships. Show them there might be a whole nother school. They don't know there's an Antelope Valley College that they can go get an A&P from. They don't know that exists. Yeah. Or, that there's scholarships for flight schools, that there's local organizations, that there's a Girls in Aviation Day. They don't know these things exist, and it's up to us to be responsible to educate on what that is. And we have those tools now with social media, and honestly, we're doing a pretty good job of it.
Yeah.
But it does take a village. You can't just depend on the organization to do it.
Yeah.
You have to share that stuff. You have to engage. You have to do these different things to bring in the pipeline and then to develop them. Because, we talk a lot about bringing them in, but it's kind of like retaining a customer.
Right.
We got to retain our people.
Yep.
And what do you do to help them retain and grow to that next level so that way they don't leave us?
Yeah, exactly. Well, cool.
I may be a little passionate about that.
I think so.
A little bit.
That's what I wanted.
That's why I wanted
to ask you about it. So, well, it's awesome. I mean, there's a lot of awesome things going on right now between technology and kind of shifts in the industry and new people entering the industry. I think that there's a lot going on. I'm really excited about it. I'm seeing it from maybe a little bit different of a lens right now. But yeah, NBAA is in just a couple of weeks. Yeah. You're going to be there.
I will be there.
ATP will be there.
Yep. We got a big booth.
Where you remember your booth number?
1133.
All right. Well,
1133. Be right there.
So anybody who's listening, go link up with Lee and check out.
I might have
ATP
some socks.
booth.
I'm just saying. There might be some socks there, and I'll probably give you a hug. I don't even know who you are, but I'll probably give you a hug. I'm just so excited to see people again. I'm so ready.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else?
Well, if I start, I'm going to get on another soapbox, Greg. You know I will. It'll just keep going and going and going. But no, just, I'm excited. I think just one closing thought is, like my little silver linings, talking about one of the things that all this past 15 months, whatever many months is 10 years, 2 weeks, I don't even know anymore. I think it really has forced people to think about how we communicate differently and almost force them to use the different channels in ways they hadn't thought before, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
And I think combining that with our personal aspect is, it's there's a paradigm shift in how it's forced everybody to do it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a good thing because now you see more people leveraging the tools they have than they ever have before, whether it's for workforce development or for building your own personal brand or working for your company. And, it's here, it's there, and we are engaged. So it is good to see people still engaged, but I am ready for people.
Face-to-face
I'm ready
engagement.
for face-to-face and people. Yes. Yeah. Hear voices, see people, eye contact, all that good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. It was awesome having you on and good to see you. Yes. And yeah.
Tell Millie we miss her.
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.